The world, as we are accustomed to, is changing. Since the pre-industrial era, the global temperature has risen by 1 degree Celsius, or 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The increase in global temperature results from climate change, or global warming. Let's get this out the way. Climate change can be a naturally occurring phenomenon. It has happened before throughout Earth's existence. Where you're standing right now very well could have been an ocean or a frozen tundra or a blazing hot desert millions of years ago. However, the Earth's temperature has recently increased more dramatically and quickly in the past century than ever before. This alarming change has already had terrible effects on the world, reducing snow cover and sea ice, rising sea levels, catastrophic heat waves, intensifying storms, and endangering habitats for plants, animals, and humans. Global warming works like this. The sun emits large amounts of solar radiation that travels throughout the solar system. When it reaches Earth, it is either reflected off the surface as infrared radiation or gets absorbed as heat by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Most of the reflectivity comes from polar ice caps and other snow-covered areas. Other land masses like forests or oceans absorb the heat. This process helps the Earth maintain a balance between hot and cold. Recently, this process has been enhanced by greenhouse gases from mainly artificial sources, which has led to the increase in global temperature. Since industrialization began in the 18th century, human activities have caused a 50% increase in atmospheric CO2 levels, meaning the amount of CO2 now is 150% of its value in 1750. This rise, driven mainly by human actions, exceeds the natural increase at the end of the last ice age around 20,000 years ago. This increase can cause the composite effect of rising sea levels due to the melting of glaciers, leaving more ocean than ice. Remember that oceans absorb light from the sun. Over here in northern Greenland, you can see a vast area covered in snow, reduced to small patches. This area affected covers roughly 16,000 square miles, bigger than the state of Maryland. As stated before, less snow to cover the Earth means less heat reflected into space and more heat absorbed in the atmosphere. Over here, you can see the Columbia Glacier, located in Alaska, retreating more inland. Since 1984, around 50 square miles of ice has melted into the Pacific Ocean, more than double the size of Manhattan. According to NOAA, one consequence of melting ice caps is rising sea levels. As of 2022, the average global sea level has increased over 4 inches or 101 millimeters since 1992. Over the past 140 years, satellites and tide gauges show that the worldwide sea level has risen 21 to 24 centimeters or 8 to 9 inches. And it continues to increase at a steady 0.15 inches per year or 3.9 millimeters. The graph you see in front of you is from the Poseidon satellite launched in 1992. They recorded sea levels across the world for 30 years. The data they have gotten from the satellite has confirmed the global observations that the scientists have already seen from the shoreline. The seas are rising. and the pace is quickening. The effects of this are visible on a smaller scale near the Himalayas. This is Silin Lake, located in Tibet, China. Over the past 30 years, glaciers and snow from the neighboring mountains have melted into this lake, submerging large areas and shores. Silin Lake isn't the only example, nor is it the best, but it illustrates the effects of rising water levels caused by climate change. Here in Kiribati, the country is surrounded by the Pacific. It is comprised of 32 atolls, and as of the 2020 census, 119,000 people live here, most of whom live in Tarawa. On average, the country is 2 meters above the sea level. Currently, the nation is under attack by climate change. With the sea levels rising, people are struggling to keep their homes and livelihoods from flooding every day. The citizens of this country have to construct crude walls in order to protect their property. The flooding threatens their access to drinkable water as it risks contamination. Even with the walls they put up, the water manages to spray over them or seep through the ground. Every once a month, the country suffers from a storm surge, which leaves the people completely defenseless against the ocean.
"20 years ago, the sea was far away. We were safe back then, even at high tide. The water only reached this far. We used to have a lot of trees. Our land was much greener. We had no idea we'd have to live like this one day."
The situation is threatening. However, many of the people in Kiribati don't want to leave their homes, stating that they belong here and are proud of their country and culture. In 30 more years, they might just have to leave their homes if climate change isn't prevented. Kiribati isn't the only country that is battling against climate change. Countries like it have to face the same issues that jeopardize everything essential to them. As of 2020, almost 40% of the people in the United States lives in coastal cities, which host 54.6 million jobs, producing 10 trillion in goods and services, employ 54.6 million people, and pay 4 trillion in wages. If the sea level continues to rise, many coastal cities will be flooded. The 129 million people who live in these cities will have to evacuate more inland, further complicating population density and having catastrophic effects on the economy. However, this will not only affect the United States, it will happen to the rest of the world. Not only does climate change contribute to the global sea rise, but it also helps create some of the most devastating droughts and heat waves. In 2003, Europe suffered through one of the most devastating droughts and heat waves in recorded history. It saw the hottest summer recorded in Europe since at least 1540. This heat wave resulted in the deaths of 30,000 people across Europe. Beginning in June and continuing through mid-August, temperatures soared through 20 to 30% above the average. Even nightly temperatures were higher than the average summer midday highs. Alpine glaciers shrank by 10% over the summer, and thawing in the mountains reached deeper and occurred at higher altitudes than average. Forest fires raged across Western Europe. Harvests were affected by the heat, which led to a decline in fodder and grain in production. High water temperatures and low water levels led to several French nuclear power plants shutting down when the demand for electricity was great. Another prominent example of drought is the drying of the Great Salt Lake in Utah, United States. Since 1984, the lake has suffered through many droughts, leaving it to shrink in size. The lake has lost nearly half of its surface area from the historical average, exposing around 2,000 square kilometers of lake bed. According to the European Space Agency, the lake goes through seasonal cycles of water loss and replenishment after rain and snow melt fills it back up. According to officials, the water evaporation and depletion exceeds the amount of water entering the lake. The drying of the Great Salt Lake threatens the economy, ecology, and the people of northern Utah. The lake is a refuge for migratory birds and generates millions in economic development through mineral extraction and tourism. As the lake shrinks, the salt becomes more concentrated, endangering brine shrimp that millions of birds rely on for food. As more lake beds are exposed, the dry soil increases, and dust laced with dangerous heavy metals in the air can threaten public health when dust storms carry them into town, causing damage when inhaled and intensifying respiratory illnesses. Alongside the Great Salt Lake is Lake Mead. Lake Mead is an artificial lake made to supply Las Vegas with water taken from the Colorado River. It also supplies water to millions across 7 states, tribal lands, and northern Mexico. Droughts and heat waves in the southwest are projected to become more intense, with cold waves becoming less intense and less frequent. According to NASA, 74% of the 9 western states experienced some level of drought, 35% of which was extreme or exceptional. At the headwaters of the Colorado River, 83% of the state faced drought, and the snowpack that feeds the river was below average in many places. As stated by NASA, continuing a 22-year downward trend, water levels in Lake Mead stand at their lowest since April 1937, when the reservoir was still being filled for the first time. As of July 18, 2022, Lake Mead was filled to just 27% of its capacity. The lake elevation data shown comes from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, which manages Lake Mead, Lake Powell, and other portions of the Colorado River watershed. As of 2022, the Hoover's Dam water threshold to be operational was shy of 40 feet. Lake levels at the dam should stay above 1,000 feet to continue operating hydropower turbines at normal levels. This only scratches the surface of the most dangerous threat to Earth. The effects of climate change trickle down to every ecosystem and every environment, no matter how small. Climate change is a global crisis. No one should ignore it or feel that they won't be altered by it, or that it isn't a serious problem. We have already seen the effects scientists predicted, such as the loss of sea ice, melting glaciers and ice sheets, sea level rise, and even more intense heat waves. Scientists expect global temperature increases from human-made greenhouse gases to continue. Severe weather damage will also increase and intensify. Global climate change is not a future problem, it's a present-day issue. The effects scientists had long predicted would result from global climate change are now occurring, and some of these problems are happening sooner than expected. According to the 3rd and 4th National Climate Assessment Reports, if temperatures continue to rise, global sea levels will increase to at least another foot, or 0.3 meters, but could reach as high as 6.6 feet or 2 meters in the high emission scenario. Hurricanes will continue to intensify, the devastating effects of drought and heat waves will continue to rise, increased flooding and longer wildfire seasons are expected, and by the mid-century, all of the Arctic ice is expected to melt. Despite the challenges that lie ahead, all hope isn't lost. Despite the pushback by corporations and governments to shut down pro-climate activism, the support and dedication of those who fight for the future and stability of Earth match it. According to a Carbon Break 2024 analysis, the UK's greenhouse gas emissions fell 3.6% in 2024 to their lowest level since 1872. About half of the drop in emissions in 2024 was due to a 54% reduction in UK coal demand, which fell to just 2 megatons, the lowest since 1666. Significant contributions also came from the closure of the UK's last coal-fired power station in Nottinghamshire. Another third of the drop in 2024 emissions was due to a falling demand for oil and gas. Oil demand fell 1.4% despite increased road traffic, mainly due to the rise in electric vehicles. No sacrifices have been made to the UK economy, as the GDP has nearly doubled since 1990. While the UK's emissions are 54% below 1990, the GDP has grown by 84%. The fight is still not over though, as the UK needs to cut its emissions by a larger amount each year going forward to reach its international climate goals for 2035 and to reach the target for a net zero by 2050. Adding on to that, the world's largest shipping nations, except the United States, decided on April 11th, 2025 to impose a tax of $100 per ton of greenhouse gases emitted by ships above a certain threshold. These thresholds are planned to be more stricter as time passes. The International Maritime Organization estimates 11 billion to 13 billion in revenue annually from the fees. The money would then be put forward to invest in fuels and technologies needed to transition to reduce carbon emissions, reward low-emission ships, and support developing countries needing cleaner energy. In 2025, Portugal made history by being the first country to ban deep-sea mining until 2050. The ban protects fragile ecosystems and prevents the disturbance of seabed sediments, which could release stored carbon, potentially worsening the effects of climate change. And for the first month on record, the US hit a new record low for fossil fuels in the electricity mix last month as solar and wind reached a record high. More than half of the energy, 50.8%, generated in the US came from clean sources, with wind and solar power quadrupled from 5.7% to a record of 24.4% of US electricity. Fossil fuel energy has been declining in the US power sector from 65% in March 2015 to 49.2% in March 2025, surpassing the previous monthly record low of 51% in April 2024. Oil companies have also been held accountable for their actions. A jury ruled on April 4th, 2025 that Chevron must pay $740 million to restore the damage it caused to the southeast Louisiana coastal wetlands, following a landmark trial more than a decade in the making. Jurors found that energy giant Texaco, acquired by Chevron in 2001, had for decades violated Louisiana regulations governing coastal resources by failing to restore wetlands impacted by dredging canals, drilling wells, and billions of gallons of wastewater dumped into the marsh. Last but not least, A global survey spanning 125 countries, interviewing nearly 130,000 individuals, found strong support for climate action worldwide. 69% state that they would be willing to contribute 1% of their household income every month to fight global warming. An additional 6% reported that they would be willing to contribute a smaller fraction of their income, and 26% stated that they would not be willing to contribute any amount. The contribution varies across countries. Overall, 86% of respondents say that people in their country should try to fight global warming. 2/3 of 119 countries are in support of pro-climate policies, and in more than half of the sampled countries, the demand for more government action exceeds 90%. Although there is overwhelming support for more climate action worldwide, the study finds that pluralistic ignorance is taken hold. Pluralistic ignorance is when people mistakenly believe that others predominantly hold an opinion different from theirs. The willingness to act against climate change contrasts with the prevailing global pessimism regarding others' willingness to act. This survey emphasizes the importance of fighting together and not falling into the trap of thinking that it's hopeless or that, what can I do? I'm only one person. We must keep sharing our thoughts and pressure representatives to push for pro-climate policies to help everyone and everything on Earth from suffering any further. The time to act is now. We cannot wait any longer while our planet is being killed. Climate change will affect everyone because everyone lives on Earth. There is no escape from the consequences. I believe Carl Sagan said it best.
The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.